lesson 110, you will be solving multiplication and division equations involving one step. The division property of equality says that if you divide both sides of an equation by the same non-zero number, the two sides remain equal. So in our first example, 150h equals 675, we're going to do just like we did in the last lesson. We're going to draw the train tracks, but this time 150h means 150 times h, and to undo the multiplication we're going to divide by 150. And rather than using the old-fashioned divide sign, you will see the fraction bar used to show divide when solving equations. Since we're not using calculators in this chapter, if you don't know what 675 divided by 100 is, you're going to have to do a long division problem. 675 divided by 150. Well, I can make a pretty good guess at how many times 150 goes into 675, because 150 goes into 300 twice, so into 600 that would be 4 times. 4 times 150 is 600. Now subtract and you have 75 left over. Add a decimal point and a 0. Bring the 0 down. Now since 150 times 4 was 600, it's going to be 5 times to go into 750. 150 times 5 is exactly 750, because 150 times 4 was 600. When you put another 150 on there, you end up at 750. So the answer, over here on the left, if you take 150 and divide by 150, you get 1, and 1 times h is just h. And on the other side, 675 divided by 150 is 4.5. You can still be checking your answers by plugging it back into the problem. 150 times 4.5 should equal 675. Now might be a good time for you to pause the video and try the next 3 on your own. Alright, in the first practice problem, 8x equals 72. Divide both sides by 8, because that's 8 times x, and to undo multiplication you divide. 8 divided by 8 is 1, and 1 times x is x. And on the other side, 72 divided by 8 is 9. If you want to check your work, you would plug 9 back in for x. 8 times 9 equals 72, so we know we've got the correct answer. Draw your train tracks. Negative 4n means negative 4 times n, so we're going to undo the multiplication by dividing both sides by negative 4. It has to be by negative 4 and not positive 4, because your goal is to end up with a positive n on this side, and a negative divided by a negative is positive. So negative 4 divided by negative 4 is positive 1. 1 times n is just n. And then 28 divided by negative 4. You have one of each sign, so it's going to be negative 7. Now don't let this last one fool you. Just because they've switched the sides, it doesn't switch what you're doing. Your goal is still to get the k by itself, so you want to get rid of this negative 6 or make it become a 1k instead of negative 6k. In order to get 1k, we'd want to divide both sides by negative 6. Now over here on the right side, a negative 6 divided by negative 6, that's 1, and 1 times k is just k. And on the other side, the negative 12 divided by negative 6 is a positive 2 because negative divided by a negative is positive. However, you'll see the answer usually written with the variable first, so I'm going to write k equals 2. The multiplication property of equality says that if you multiply both sides of an equation by the same number, the two sides remain equal. So in the second type of an example, this says a divided by negative 3 equals negative 7. We're going to undo the dividing by multiplying. I'm going to multiply this side by negative 3 and also the other side by negative 3. When I take this times negative 3, it really is like negative 3 over 1. And when I multiply these two fractions, these will cancel out and become 1s. And when I multiply by 1, I end up with what I started with. So this will just be a on the left. And on the other side, negative 7 times negative 3 is going to be a positive 21 because these are both the same sign. And when we're multiplying or dividing, if they're the same sign, it's always positive. Now, if you wanted to check your work, you would go back here and say 21 divided by negative 3 should equal negative 7. Now would be another good time to pause the video and try those 3 at the bottom on your own. Draw your train tracks. Instead of dividing by negative 4, multiply by negative 4 on both sides. These negative 4's will become 1's, and 1 times y is just y. And on the right side, a negative 8 times a negative 4 is a positive 32. You can check your work by plugging that back in. 32 divided by negative 4 equals negative 8. In this example, instead of dividing by 5, you would multiply by 5. Your 1's will cancel, your 5's will cancel and become 1's. And you're left with 1 times m, which is just m. And on the right side, a negative 9 times 5 is a negative 45. When you have one of each, it is always negative when you multiply or divide. Now to check your work, you plug that back in for m. Negative 45 divided by 5 equals negative 9. The last one, they switched it up and put the variable on the other side. Your goal is to get the b by itself, so we are going to undo the dividing by negative 2 by multiplying by negative 2 on both sides. Negative 2 times 30 is negative 60. And the negative 2's will cancel and become 1's. 1 times b is just b. So b equals negative 60. To check your work, negative 60 divided by negative 2, that equals positive 30. We've got one example left. It's a word problem. It says an adult lizard is about 5 times as long as a hatchling. If an adult lizard is 11 centimeters long, about how long is a hatchling? Just like we did earlier in this chapter, after reading the problem, I asked myself, what is it that we don't know? What we don't know is how long is a hatchling. Since that's the thing I don't know, that's what I'm going to make my variable. Let's say h for hatchling. Let's have h equal the length of a hatchling. Now let's go back and read what it says and see if we can come up with the equation. An adult lizard is 5 times as long as a hatchling. How do you show 5 times as long as a hatchling? Well, if a hatchling is h, 5 times as long as a hatchling would be 5 times h, or 5h. So the adult lizard is 5H. And they go on to say that an adult lizard is 11 centimeters long. So if an adult hatchling is 5 times as long, if an adult lizard is 5 times as long as a hatchling, then 5 times a hatchling is going to equal the adult lizard size, which is 11. So there's our equation. Now we're going to go ahead and solve it. This is a multiplication equation. You're going to undo the multiplying by dividing both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 1 times h is h. On the other side, if you don't know what 11 divided by 5 is, then we're going to go do some long division. 11 divided by 5. 5 goes into 11 2 times, which is 10. Subtract, you get 1. Add a decimal point and a 0. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. And we have a remainder of 0, so we can go ahead and stop. It is 2.2, or 2 2/10 centimeters, I think. Yep, centimeters long. So the hatchling should be 2 2/10 centimeters long.